Today is Friday, December 20th, 2024. It is 4 p.m. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Mulholland.
Here.
Commissioner Marriott.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Commissioner Resnicki.
Here.
Mayor Petrola.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, first item, are there any amendments to the agenda as proposed?
I have some ads.
Okay,
I have an action item for a motion to terminate freebie and discussion items. In the 2014 consent order and 2017 memo, and also adding to the agenda on January 28th, decoupling of permitting items. And third one would be electrical full wiring, rewire being under the minimal permitting.
I'm sorry, that was,
Is this me or can anybody understand what you said?
excuse me, sir. Sir, I will be repeating everything.
No, I was having difficult hearing.
Yeah. I'll be repeating everything, and please, if you have anything, okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Decoupling,
Decoupling of,
so you're requesting something to be added to the agenda on January?
in January 28th,
Okay,
correct.
so that we can just send to the city clerk.
Perfect.
Please send any items for future agendas. Okay. We can certainly discuss freebie. I'm not sure what actions we can take on that today.
I would say neither myself or the city attorney would recommend you take action on a non-agendized.
So would you care to amend that to a discussion?
I guess I need to. Yes, I'll amend that to a discussion.
Okay. So we will add, between action items 3 and adjournment 4, we will add 2 discussion items. One for freebie, one for a consent order. Will that suffice? Okay, thank you.
Is electrical under the full rewire for minimal permitting? Or will that fall under?
Is that
Our
part
permit
of the
discussion.
January discussion?
No, that is not part of the January
Okay,
discussion.
so you would like to add a discussion item for electrical wiring?
Correct, the full rewire under the minimal permitting.
Okay. Okay, so those would be items 4A, B, and C, and then adjournment will be item 5. Okay, are there any other amendments to the agenda as proposed? Yes, sir?
I've got a couple things that I'd like to talk about, but I think they're going to come up in the discussion, so
Okay,
I'd hate to have us adjourn and not discuss, but I think that I'm going to have an opportunity to discuss them, so I don't think that we have to, I hope we don't need to add them, so
okay,
I think I'm good.
thank you, sir. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I make a motion to approve the amended agenda for the special meeting of Friday, December 20th, 2024 of the St. Pete Beach City Commission.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marriott.
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson.
Yes.
Commissioner Resnicki.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mulholland.
Yes.
Mayor Petrola.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. If you'll please silence your cell phones. Thank you. All right, the first item is number 2, Helene and Milton recovery efforts.
Thank you, Mayor. May I introduce this item? But this was, the two items we put on the agenda this evening were to address what we would consider time-sensitive information that we wanted to share with you and didn't think it could wait until mid-January. And so Brandon is here today to discuss some changes in interpretation regarding the look-back period that you adopted. And we wanted to make sure that because we had interpretation differences that were different than what were presented to you when you adopted it, that you were aware of those and receive feedback from you on whether you desire any different direction from staff. And just want to kick it off and have Brandon give us the rundown.
And this is follow-up after we passed an ordinance, and then subsequently FEMA came back.
Yes, Mayor.
And this was something that we were advised of at the time, that FEMA might send this back to us for review.
Yes, this is one of the complications in this process is we have multiple jurisdictions advising us. And if any of you have been involved in language over the years, one person views it a different way. And we just want to make sure that we bring this as soon as we find out that we can share those interpretations with you.
Thank you.
So as the city manager pointed out, this is an interpretation change. This doesn't tie into any language that was actually adopted through Ordinance 2024-16. The language that was incorrectly applied has since been corrected, was included in the 2021 ordinance where the city went to the 5-year look back. It was retained in the 2024 ordinance where it was reduced to 1 year. We met with representatives from FEMA on the 12th, 2 days, of course, after this ordinance was adopted, and they did clarify that exceptions never apply to restoration from a damaging event or from simultaneously active permits, those exceptions being the ones that were discussed at the meeting back in November, the equal change out of mechanical windows, doors, and re-roofs. Essentially, multi-year look-back provisions only allow exceptions to the higher standard, never to the minimum NFIP requirement. There is no benefit of a higher standard that allows for effectively a loophole on these exceptions. It's only an exception to the higher standard that a city adopts, and I'll give a few examples of that in a moment. A permit can never exceed the 50% depreciated value of the structure without requiring elevation or demolition. So this was an example that was shown to you back in November. This is unchanged. This is the exact same interpretation that was presented to you in November. If you have a home with a depreciated 50% value of $50,000, the homeowner had opened a permit for a bedroom and bathroom remodel in the amount of $45,000 in February of this year. They had planned to close it out in October. In September, the structure sustained $20,000 in storm damage. Added together, the $45,000 permit plus the $20,000.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to please step outside until you resolve yourself on. Thank you. Please continue.
With the repairs and the elective improvements that were still open added together, they add up to $65,000. It's 65% of the depreciated value. That would be considered a substantial improvement. The home would need to be elevated or demolished. So again, this interpretation is unchanged. This has been applied by the city back since 2021. So this is a change to what was presented to you. Again, a structure with a 50% substantial improvement value of $50,000. In this case, the bedroom and bathroom remodel was closed out prior to the storm event. However, the homeowner sustained $60,000 in storm-related damage to the structure. This now includes the exempted items. So let's say independently, previously, there had been $40,000 in electric, plumbing, and drywall repairs that needed to be made, $20,000 in roof and mechanical change-out repairs that needed to be made. These now need to be added together based on the interpretation that we received from FEMA. So in this case, whereas previously, under the previous interpretation, it might have only been a $40,000 repair for substantial improvement purposes, it's now $60,000. Those exempted items do need to be included in the cumulative repairs needed to restore the structure.
Brendan, a quick question before you move, because since I'm looking at the heading on the top and it says 1 year and no look backs, are you meaning that's what they're saying for both, whether we had a no look back
Correct, and all three examples I'm presenting here are going to apply the same to a 1 year, a no look back. If we went longer, it would be unchanged. They all apply the
So
exact
how
same.
far do they go back on that? And I
Yeah.
just need this clarified, because if it's,
Mhm.
if it's something that's an exemption, does that mean like 20 years ago?
No. So everything else stays in place based on the language that was adopted. So we started fresh on September 24th, 2024. So anything closed out on that date, we're not looking back any further to that. The only thing that we're looking at are open permits on that date and any storm-related damage that takes place on or after. And then this is another example that was presented to you back in November. Again, it's unchanged. The interpretation applies to both the 1 year and the no look back options. Should a structure have sustained $45,000 in storm damage in September, the permit's open, it's closed out in February 2025. The homeowner then immediately pulls a permit for a $45,000 elective bathroom and bedroom remodel, again under that 50% structure value. They close that out. Next year, they sustain $10,000 in storm damage. These are all consecutive permits. There's no overlap. At no point in time does the homeowner have more than 50% of the structure's value open in permits at the same time. They would be fine. They would not need to elevate the structure in this instance, just the same as was presented back in November. So I had presented that there was a benefit to the 1 year look back, and that it would allowed us to exclude those exemptions that I had outlaid in November. That is not the case. The 1 year look back and the no look back options are the same in every regard, except that the 1 year look back is stricter. The only benefit to the 1 year look back is that it does promote resiliency during blue skies. It does have that 1 year look back for the elective improvements that prevent the homeowner from making consecutive improvements to the structure, and that's a benefit in terms of, at least in terms of resiliency. So in terms of implications, the silver lining to this, I have looked back. We have not issued any permits for hurricane-related damages that, going back and recalculating in the exceptions, are then going to cause that structure to be considered substantially damaged. We have reviewed all of those permits in which there were window, door change-outs, mechanical change-outs, re-roof. None of these recalculations put the structure over the threshold for substantial damage. We've begun correcting for this lack of exceptions moving forward. Any permit issued as of the date we were notified of this, we will be looking at those exceptions and adding them in if needed. The substantial improvement and damage packet has been updated to correct for this lack of exceptions. We are looking for direction from the commission tonight on either reverting to a no look back option, that was the option B that had been presented to you back in November, or simply amending and clarifying language to prevent this mistake from being made in the future. So looking at the no look back reversion, this is again the minimum NFIP requirement. It's the minimum requirement for the city to remain in the program. It has no CRS point implications compared with the adopted 1 year standard. We don't earn any points for the 1 year standard. We would not earn any points if we went down to a no look back minimum NFIP requirement. It is more permissive than the 1 year look back with the clarification issued by FEMA. There is no benefit to the 1 year look back other than resiliency in terms of this event. And that's, of course, a blue sky long-term option. The 1 year look back only encourages resiliency through home hardening. It does not provide loopholes to the minimum NFIP requirements. And this is our substantial damage definition in the code. I won't go through all of it, but this would be the second option that we're presenting to you. And it's really just clarification to make sure that this mistake is not made in the future, that there isn't this consistent misinterpretation when future staff begin to interpret this code. And we're simply asking to add the language that a project shall include the cost associated with repairing repairing a damaged structure to its pre-damage condition. Projects being any overall improvements that need to be made following a storm or during a substantial improvement that need to be considered by staff in this calculation. So again, we're just seeking your direction. We would bring this back in January. Neither of these affect the new interpretation. There's nothing that needs to be amended into the code. We know how to move forward on this, but we just want to make sure that the code is either shored up for future interpretation or that we give the commission the option to revert to a no look back, what we had in place prior to 2021, due to how it was presented to you back in November. Do you have any questions for me?
Of course, there's one more option, and that would be to opt out of the National Flood Insurance Program. Is that not correct?
That is an option.
Okay.
I have a question. SI and SD is still decoupled, correct?
That's
That doesn't
correct.
change?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So what happens in a situation where, again, you would say this would never happen in a million years, except that it did happen, which is you have a house that's flooded during one event, and then 2 weeks later your roof blows off?
So in consecutive events where repairs are not made in between the events, they have to be considered one damage period. I don't believe issued any permits for storm damage repairs in between Helene and Milton. So they have to be considered one damage period for the purposes of calculating substantial damage. If someone had sustained, if their home had sustained damage from Hurricane Ian, they had completed the repairs, they closed them out, and then Hurricane Helene damage occurred, those would be considered distinct events, whether under the 1 year or the no look back, because the improvements had been, or the repairs rather, had been completed between the events. But because of this unprecedented situation, the repairs were not made for any structures between those two events.
And this comes directly from FEMA, or is this?
That's FEMA, yes.
So they want us to count the events separately in every other scenario, right?
Mhm.
Invoicing, debris removal, but they want the homeowner to count it as one event.
And it's because that definition includes the cost to restore a structure to its pre-damage condition. It's not necessarily tied to a specific event, and it could be it could be fire damage, it could be vandalism, there could be other damaging events that occur that aren't necessarily tied to a storm, but it's the cost for restoration to pre-damage condition.
Thank you.
So all along, my position's been help the most people, hurt the least people, and do what's best for the long-term interest of the city. If we stayed with what I'll call option 2, but modified, well, not call it, or option 1 and modified it, what's the impact so far as how many we help, how many we hurt?
I don't have an exact count other than to say that based on the permits that have been issued, no one has been hurt in terms of their home being considered substantially damaged based on this new interpretation. But the code amendments don't really affect that interpretation. It's how we have to interpret the code, at least as long as we stay in the NFIP. The clarification is just to prevent this mistake from being made in the future. The benefit of the no look back would be, again, during the blue sky periods where a homeowner is looking to make consecutive improvements to their home, none of those improvements being substantial, but where consecutively added together, they would be considered substantial improvement over the 1 year period. If the city were to go to a no look back, what we had in place prior to 2021, that would allow those consecutive improvements to be made and not need to be considered cumulative. But in terms of the clarifying language being added to the code, that doesn't help or hinder anyone in comparison to what we have in the code currently.
Which one are we most likely to have somebody fall in a donut hole during hurricane season?
Technically, there could be a situation where the no look back, if someone were to look to make multiple voluntary improvements to their structure after they complete their hurricane repairs, the no look back would benefit them. But in terms of the storm damage period, neither option is more beneficial or less than the other. They're both the same. We're bringing this item to you because of the interpretation changes, not due to anything that's in the code. It's just how it's been interpreted.
So the 1 year look back from a city resiliency issue still remains a more viable option long-term.
Long-term, I'd say it's
In the
more.
short term, we don't really know if either one of them helps or hurts more people. Is that would be a correct
I would say they're fairly equivalent in terms of storm damage, hurricane damage relate, because it doesn't affect that side of it. The repairs, as long as the repairs open at one time, don't exceed the 50% depreciated value of the structure, that's going to apply the same under a no look back or a 1 year look back. The benefit of the no look back is that it allows those consecutive improvements. The benefit of the 1 year is that during non-storm events, it allows for that slightly increased resiliency.
And just for clarification, on the multiple permits, are we talking hardening items as well? Windows that, or are those excluded on the back-to-backs?
Yes, so that's a good point.
I'm not explaining it well, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
I do. So during non-storm events, if a homeowner decided to pull consecutive permits for hardening items, so they decided to replace their roof, they decided on the next permit to replace their windows and doors, after completing those improvements, closing them out, they would still be at a zero balance because those are specifically accepted in our code from the cumulative 1 year improvements. What we received clarification that they are not excluded from is from storm damage repairs. If they need to replace windows, doors, roofs as a result of storm damage, they have to be added together. But they would remain accepted under the 1 year and under the no look back.
As long as it's closed, right? Because you said closed.
Closed,
If
yes.
it's still open, you're replacing your windows and your roof, and it's still, then it counts.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think it was pointed out at one of the last meetings, making these improvements outside of storm season,
Close the
prevents
permit.
that type of
Right.
risk.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. Close. Okay, I'm going to go back to the language. You said cost to pre-damage condition, right? So FEMA, and I'm trying to go back to, I'm a proponent of no look back. I was before, and I still stand there, because when I read the reference book and it says the cost to pre-damage condition, so we had Helene, you had the damage, right, that day. And so now you have this damage, and now you're trying to determine the cost to repair pre-Helene. We're moving along, doing our packet, and all of a sudden we've got Milton coming, right? Milton comes, now Milton damages. So the day before Milton, I was already damaged. So my cost is to repair from what is damaged after Milton. This is how I'm reading it literally, right? Pre-damage condition before that event. So to go to say I'm adding the cost to Helene doesn't make sense to me, because my damage is the day before Milton, not before Helene. I've already lost a lot that day, right? So to me, it's still, I'm not seeing it as added more, because I'm already damaged. I haven't even done a repair. I haven't pulled a permit. So now I'm trying to repair a damaged building, right, that I haven't even done anything with. So I still, and I think if I remember, and I'm trying to remember everything in that reference book, I think they even had an example in scenarios like that when you have something so close to each other that FDEM, FEMA looks at what it was the day before that storm, whether it's a storm or fire or whatever event it is, the event, right? Because you could have been damaged, and maybe you haven't even decided. You don't even know what you're going to do. You don't know if you're going to lift the home. You don't even know what's going to happen. So to me, it's not complicate the situation, right? Look storm to storm or event to event, because that's what they're doing anyways. I don't see a cumulative, and I hope that we're seeing the language that we're not going to tell someone, let's go see what it looked like before Helene. It's going to look a lot worse after Milton, obviously. You haven't had that much time. Now, a year's worth of time, to lapse. We had, I don't even remember the name of all the storms, the one before Helene. And I know because I had to do a claim, right? I had already an open claim from the prior storm from Helene. Was it Adalia? I can't remember the order. So I already still had something that I had gone to my insurance company to claim, right? And they reminded me, I'm like, oh yeah, 2023, I forgot about that flood, right? So these things are always there, but that was not as significant to my home as Helene was. So the storms could be different. We could have a Category 5 and be talking about a different situation, a Category 1. So damages will always be different, but it's always storm to storm, like they did with my insurance company. It was the same thing. They're just looking to that event. So I mean, I am a proponent still of no look back, because I feel that's what I've been reading is what they're doing anyways. Instead of convoluting it more, it seems like we made it, I remember when we went to the 5-year, and I was not very happy when we went to that 5-year back then in 21, or whatever year that it was adopted. And now we're here, you know, trying to massage it more again, instead of just going to what FEMA is looking at.
Well, no one's trying to massage anything.
mean,
They're asking for direction, and based on the information that we had at the time, we made a decision based on the information we have. Now we have updated information after
To make an
FEMA came back to us, and so the staff is asking for direction
Mhm.
as to what do we want to go, what do we want to do. Based on the new information that we have, there seems to be no benefit to 1 year or 0 look back. I mean, at this point, you know. So I think what the staff is looking for, they're looking for direction,
Mhm.
you know, and so that if we have consensus that no look back is the way to go, then we can send it back and bring it to the very first commission meeting in January as an updated ordinance at that time.
I have a question. Which one is more efficient in time? And is one more efficient for permitting versus another, as well as for explaining to residents?
Well, the no look back is simpler just because we look at open permits. If nothing else is open, if it's under the 50% value, we issue the permit. With the cumulative, there will be those situations where we have to look back. So I guess in that regard, it's more efficient.
Thank you.
I think everybody asked the questions I had. I think that going to the no look back option seems to make the most sense with the information that we have now.
Does that provide you with the direction you need?
Can we not make a decision now? Like, do we have to wait till
It's
January?
not an action item, and
I thought it was. Oh, no.
and it,
You can give us direction, we'll bring an emergency ordinance, and we can put staff in a position to start to look at things through that lens.
I mean, we can also, you know,
Have another emergency
we
meeting.
can have another emergency meeting.
Yeah, I mean, people are waiting, right? I mean, we don't want to wait till January, because it would be waiting till January 14th. Is that their next one?
Yeah.
That's,
So how much time does the city attorney need to draft or make an amendment to?
Drafted.
It's drafted?
Yeah.
Okay.
it's drafted already?
Mhm.
What are we doing Monday?
And this is because we have to put it on action, right? So we have to wait.
We have to notice it.
Madam City Clerk, what do you need for noticing?
I need 72 hours at minimum.
Is Monday 5 p.m., is that 72 hours?
I would have to notice it today at 5 p.m.
Monday at 6 p.m.?
I would have to notice it to be.
I understand, I'm saying like.
No, I mean to notice it by then. Notice it on Monday.
Yes, I can work on it while I'm in here. That's fine.
Can we
I
But
have,
wait, are you saying to call a meeting for Monday?
call a meeting for Monday, 6 p.m.?
I am going to be on a plane, just so you know.
What time?
I can't even remember. I'm like selling, I think I don't, and you can't rely on me
Well,
landing.
we need 3 people for
We need 3
consensus,
people.
and then
Okay.
we need 3 votes.
For an emergency, do we need 3 people?
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
here.
Yeah, I'll be here.
So you're assuming that I'm going to vote for this?
I'm assuming, I'm assuming nothing, I'm simply
I'm
saying,
assuming nothing either.
if the consensus is to bring it
I
back,
guess first make a consensus.
I'll be here.
okay.
But I think we need 3 to pass anything.
You still need 3 to pass it.
I mean, I'm certainly leaning towards that's the direction that we ought to go, but I do believe that, long-term, the 1 year is the better option for the city, but I recognize all these other factors, and I am likely willing to acquiesce to that, but I might change my mind between now and Monday, but I'll be here Monday.
Joe, just to give you one more thing to think about, as I've been thinking about this, I think the 1 year look back, what it mostly does is it encourages the city to prop up a industry of people doing FEMA appraisals. It doesn't actually change the outcome. It just supports the industry that does FEMA appraisals.
And Joe, could you, I mean, just so that we could have the discussion in case I'm on a plane, you said that you favor something, I think, on the 1 year. Can you help get it in my head so that I know what it is that you favor for one.
Well, first of all, I want to evaluate it, so
Oh.
I may not.
No, I mean right now, if currently you feel that way.
Well, I feel like the back-to-back permits, and I could be wrong, but I feel like they encourage a lot of substantial improvement to properties that are at-risk properties. And that's really my biggest hang-up about it. And maybe I'm wrong. I've talked to a couple local builders. One feels it's no big deal. One says, yeah, I think you're right on that. So I've heard mixed messaging, but me personally, I just think that it encourages, too many improvements on homes that are at risk. Really, that's fundamentally why I feel the way I feel on that. But, I'm not likely to dig in my heels on this, but I don't know. I may, think about it over the weekend and feel like, yeah, I still feel super strongly about that. But I think right now I'm where everybody else here probably is. But since we don't have to vote now, I'm not prepared to say how I'm going to vote on Monday, because I believe for the long-term well-being of the city, if we ever have another event like this, that the back-to-back permits is going to put more people in a bad spot that are going to be losing their minds, and whoever the next commission is, or the next city staff and the city manager is going to be dealing with this. I just think we're encouraging more of the same.
Let me just say one thing so that when you do your homework, watch the Historic Commission, the Historic Preservation Board meeting this week. And I watched a couple, but one thing that to me was, I'm like the emotional one, so I don't want to cry, but is to hear people call the homes by names, that she's, I like the water, right, ships, and we say she's, right, that this is my home, right? I don't want to decide for someone whether they want to save their home or not, right? That's their home. Whether they like it as a 55-year-old home, whether they're going to lift it, whether they're going to repair it 100 times in the future. Some people have acquired. There was a few people that were in this particular meeting that acquired the home this year. So they actually purchased the home in July, closed, took the storm, and now want to make it historic because they value that home. The historicness of the home, or just the home overall, they feel pride in it. It's their choice. I have serious talks with residents about, this could happen again. We all know this could happen again, but I don't need to tell someone it could happen again. I don't think that I need to tell people, don't keep fixing your home. Okay, I think they could figure that out if they want to or they do not want to, but it is their home, their choice, the thing that they love dearly. Okay, I mean, I cried that meeting watching it, and I watched it on live. I wasn't here that day. And I've watched people down my street, one home that just got lifted. It's a 55-year-old home. It's lifted. It's on the basin. Anybody could see it. And several other people who have called and reached out because they're going to lift their home because they want to save that home. And now they are hardening it. And then there's people who just want to fix their home. They want to get in their home. And just because you're getting in your home today doesn't mean you will not either lift your home tomorrow, demolish your home tomorrow, or whatever it may be. It's their choice. Some people can't afford it. To do an extensive repair to flood-proof it or demolish or whatever it may be, but give them the choice. Yes, I've seen homes go up for sale, which is basically lots. We've all seen few of them going up. I know I've already seen 3 close in the Don Cesar neighborhood that I was quite surprised that they sold. That's their choice. So again, no look back. If people are going to be stacking permits because they're trying to skirt a potential storm, that's their decision, okay? It's not making it any better for me or for the community as long as we're following the guidance of what it says on the reference manual that we are doing our due diligence and have the process in place to making sure that permits are being submitted accordingly and that we are monitoring it, then we are doing what the city is supposed to be doing. Everyone should be making their own choice on what they want to do with their home, keeping it or not keeping it, lifting it, hardening it, whatever it may be. Because some people are working pretty darn hard right now trying to save their home. And I do value that when people are doing it. It's not an easy decision, and this has been pretty hard, I think, for many people already as it is. So I just encourage you to watch that, please.
But what I don't think we heard anything tonight that indicates that either option prevents anybody currently from doing any of the things that you're suggesting.
But we do encourage. What I think the city should be doing is trying to get money, offering grants for hardening. You know, things to encourage. We can do things as a city that could encourage people to make their homes better, stronger, more resilient, and the city do the same thing in itself. We need to focus on the city and our structures and our infrastructure and hardening it as well, and not keep putting more things on residents when we have to harden a lot that's within the city as well. So I think we could put our energies to offer things for them. There's other cities that help people.
Like what?
I think,
Like money, mitigation funds.
I think I'm the guy who asked,
$30,000 or Miami Beach. I know I talked to this. You can go to their website, Rise Miami Beach. They give money for people to raise their home, to improve their seawalls. Okay, they matching grants with the state. We should be putting more effort to find funds to help people to improve our infrastructure, not only just for the city, but for the residents as well. They're giving money to residents' homes. So I know that's always a hard topic because we feel like we can't, but there is money out there. That city's
So
doing it.
what money do we have that we're not giving out to
Well,
residents?
we don't have any grants for that. So like Miami Beach had actually submitted money towards the state so that they could have funds within the city so that they could match money with a resident if, for example, they want to lift their home or improve a seawall. I mean, you could, I don't want to, I know you don't have it in front of you, but if you go to their website, go
Okay,
to Rise.
so Commissioner, you've been in office now for almost a year. At any point, you could have brought these great ideas to us, and that way.
I
Okay,
have.
well, where are the grants? Where's the information on the grants? I mean, this all sounds great, and in principle, I 100% agree with you, but you've had the opportunity for 12 months. Why have you not brought this to us? Why have you not gone out
I
and said,
have.
the grants are available, let's apply for them? We
Mayor,
haven't
I
applied for
have.
any of them.
No, we haven't. Well, first of all, I'm not a grant writer here, but I have brought it up even before I was on the commission. Okay, I've been wanting to talk about resiliency for quite some time, so you could look up a lot of meetings that I wanted to bring that as a priority for the city. And the resiliency part is about that, about money, mitigating money for the city and for people's homes. So don't say that I have not brought it up, because I have brought
You
it
have
up.
brought it up. I'm saying, where's the action behind the ask?
We were busy with other things, apparently, so we haven't done it. So, yes, just as well as like looking at our.
I appreciate it, and so we will have this conversation on Monday. I would say to Commissioner Mulholland, here's where I think I disagree with you. And I do agree with you in the principle of hardening and putting things in place to allow residents to do that. I think the challenge that we have right now is for the last 12 weeks, we've been making changes and decisions, you know, at breakneck speed. And then we've had several situations where we've had to go back because we found new information from FEMA. And so here's why I would say in this scenario, I would be in favor of the 1 year of the no look back, is because we need to make that decision of 1 year versus zero look back when we actually have time to review the information, you know, when we're not in a crisis mode, where we're not having emergency meetings to make these decisions. These are decisions that should be made, you know, with care and diligence and research. And at this point, the staff has not had the time to do any of those things. I mean, they're in crisis mode, we're in crisis mode, so we're making decisions on a weekly basis now. And then sometimes we have to backtrack some of these decisions because we didn't have all the information, or because FEMA decided that what we had planned doesn't work for them and they want us to redo it. And that's why I would say in this scenario, I would be in favor of the no look back. And then bring that discussion back in 6 months from now, or a year from now, when we're not in crisis mode and we can make an intelligent decision based on all the facts. Have those conversations with FEMA for 6 months, until we've exhausted all of them and they tell us exactly what 1 year, no look back, 5 years, whatever it looks like, rather than having to, keep coming back and change things. And that's the reason why. Not that I don't agree with you in principle. We should be doing, and I agree with you in principle as well, we should be doing more for hardening. What I object to is telling people we should be doing things and then not taking any action. That's my concern. And so the time for talk is over. It's time for action. If there are resources for grants, bring them to the commission. Let's have those conversations. Let's get the staff to pursue those grants. We're already talking about bringing somebody in on a more permanent basis to help with grants. So let's do those things. But for today's discussion, on the no look back period, it sounds like we have consensus. We're going to bring it back Monday at 6 p.m. City Clerk, if you can please notice that. And then City Attorney and City Manager, do you have what you need at this time to bring this back on Monday? Yes, sir.
Before we close this item, could I just make 2 comments?
Certainly.
So, Mr. Mayor, and I know you agree with me, I was not saying that I didn't think that was the direction we needed to go.
I know that.
Okay.
I was saying like we.
But I am not going to sit here today if we're going to have a special meeting and say how I'm voting on Monday.
No, none of us are saying that. We're saying let's bring it back on Monday for a review and a vote.
I understand. And then Commissioner Reznicki, I thought we were talking about look back, and she started on grants and the like. I just want to say that, and I believe the city manager would back me up on this, I'm the guy that's been talking since day one about getting lobbyists in here to talk about how we get more money. So I'm all for that, but I don't really know what that has to do with the look back. So I just wanted to clarify those 2 points. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Okay, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have the direction I need, and just for the record, I will be out of state on Monday, so I will make appropriate accommodations to have someone here in my stead.
Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioners, I do have public comment.
Okay.
Jackie,
Any objection, since it's not noticed on the agenda, just want to confirm with the
it's for the,
commissioners that
item.
they have no objections to public comments at this time.
No objection.
Okay, thank you.
Jackie McCall.
If you will please state your name and address for the record.
Jackie McCall at 434 77th Avenue, St. Pete Beach. I'm not a great public speaker, so this is taking all that I have to get up here. But I want to let you know my house's name is Betty White because she's white and she's precious and she's a little cottage. I've lost everything that I own. Everything I own's on the street. I've lost my car. I had to buy another car. I'm standing here. I've been in a hotel for a month, and I was couch surfing for another couple of months. So I'm saying this, letting you know that this means a lot to me. So I'd just like to learn a little bit more about why St. Pete Beach chose to adopt option 1 under FEMA's handbook, section 7.5. This is different than the option 1 and 2 that you're discussing as relating to the look back period. I'd like to suggest that we explore option 2 to eliminate the use of substantial damage letters, just like our neighbors did in Treasure Island this week. Option 2 is also compliant with FEMA's regulations and was provided to all of the islands as a path forward. This option would streamline the permit process and get residents in their homes faster. And then I'd also like for the city to examine Treasure Island's hiring of Jacobs Engineering as an extension of staff for the permitting process. Our city needs help expediting the permit process and getting residents back into their homes. All the residents here feel like something more needs to be done as we are 3 months past the hurricane and the majority of residents still can't return home. The goal should be to comply with FEMA, streamline the process, and allow residents to return home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Look, we're going to maintain the quorum here, and then I would like to ask the city manager if you wouldn't mind at the end maybe just providing a quick update on permits. Would that be?
That's next up.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve Moore.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Steve Moore, excuse me, 3526 Bell Vista Drive East. And good evening. I should say my name is Steve, and I am substantially damaged. I am trying to work my recovery process, but You're not making, I don't mean you, but the city is not making it easier. I'm really here not for myself tonight, but my neighbors are completely unaware of this substantial damage letter process. They're there, they think they're waiting for the go-ahead for the permits, the red tape, their contractors to start work. I know that the damage letters are rolling out with permit numbers. I didn't understand this myself until just recently. They don't understand it. I know that my neighbors are going to receive the certified letter in a week. And these are older people. They've lived there for 30, 50 years in some cases. They may not make it. They think they're just waiting to fix their house. They may not make it. Their number may be too high to overcome. And the appraisal may not help them. But I'm telling you, they don't know. And anybody watching now, look on the permits. The damage letters are rolling out fast. You guys are way down the road on this, and I appreciate that. But the day-to-day, it's not being, looked after. The process is much too hard, and that's for people that just have a basic understanding of it. My experience has been terrible. A neighbor of mine, I just happened to be standing next to them at the permit desk. They received their letter. They were 75+% damaged. However, they were prepared, and the next day, the number came down to a little bit more than 30%. How is that possible? Something's wrong with the process. What I've been calling the Magic 8-Ball evaluation program, the secret one that the county has worked, it may really end up being a Magic 8-Ball. There may be nothing in there. I requested an inspection, an actual inspection, was told that things look good. I was at the counter. Things look good, 25, 30% what I expected. I'm one of the lucky ones. A day later, I'm substantially damaged, the letter. I don't know whether the county drive-by evaluation overrode the actual live in-house inspection. I see the building officials' corrections on the field notes in red. Something's wrong, and the process isn't working, but the fact is that most people don't even know what the process is. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And I believe you'll get some clarification on that specific in the next report.
John Kurzman.
No, I would follow.
Thank you.
It's a rarity.
Jill Medeiros.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jill Medeiros. My address is 640 78th Avenue, St. Pete Beach, Florida, 33706. Nice to see you all again, unfortunately. One thing I want to touch on, Vice Mayor, is you talk about the look-back thing. I do appreciate what you said, Mr. Mayor, that we need action now. I mean, I understand looking through to the future for our city and everyone else, but what about now? Those properties won't be here if we don't do now. So I really think the no look back thing is something that needs to be considered. And I'm all for what Ms. Jackie said about option 2. I mean, we're finding delays over and over again. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of meetings, it's not much action. I mean, we're in rentals, we have to pay mortgage, we still don't know really what's happening with our house. I got a letter, I got my substantially damaged letter. My estimate is 50.6%. According to the rules, I have to either elevate, tear down by 0.6%. I can't afford that. There's no way. Ironically enough, I got a letter from FEMA. FEMA, who has given me $0 for a rental, moving, any type of assistance. I did get $770 for food or whatever. In this letter from FEMA, it specifically says, FEMA has determined your home was damaged by the disaster, but the damage did not make your home unsafe to live in. How does FEMA tell me that my house is safe, but you tell me I have to tear it down? How does any of this make sense to the average person? We just need something, because we just can't do it for much longer. And then to tell us now, because I have a substantial damage letter, that I have to do an appeal. Now here's more paperwork, more longer process to wait for you to look over my appeal, and then to possibly stamp my permit so that I could possibly go back to work. Yes, in the meantime, I did go ahead and put money out again for an independent appraisal, which once y'all look at it and do whatever data entry you do, my substantial damage is going to go down to minimal, because this is raising my value of my home over 50% of what y'all were going off of. And I had to pay a contractor to fill out a FEMA packet. More money out of my pocket. Not sure where all the money's going to come from or where I'm going to live soon. That's all. I just wanted to bring it to your attention as to what's going on with the people that live here or don't live here.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment, please?
Certainly.
So I don't want to be characterized as the guy that says no. I don't think there's anything that I've said since we began this process that has said anything that I wanted to slow things down for anybody, or that I wanted to do anything that would slow things down. And I would challenge anybody to find the video evidence to prove that. But I think it's important that we have intelligent conversations. And I had mentioned this earlier, if we just want to make everything go away, let's just opt out of the program. Let's have a discussion about that. Let's let the residents come in and see if that's what they'd like to do. I'm not saying that I advocate for that, because I don't. I don't think it's a smart move. But there's plenty of people whose positions lead me to think that we should have that conversation, because the narrative is that flood insurance gets more expensive, and we potentially become a cash market. There's a lot more to it than that. There's multiple items more to that, but that's not the narrative out there. It's the narrative, well, we just go to private insurance, private flood insurance, and that, you know, we go about our business and we pay a little more for flood insurance.
I'm going to ask you again, if you want to speak, you can fill out a yellow card, you can bring it to the city clerk, and you will get your time uninterrupted. Until then, you will let other people who are speaking also speak uninterrupted. I don't think that's too much to ask. Do you? No, ma'am. Ma'am, if you would like to speak, we have the cards in the back. There are the cards. Okay, there are the cards. You can fill them out, and then you will take 3 minutes to speak uninterrupted, whatever it is you would like to speak. Commissioner, please continue.
So all I'm saying is if it seems as if a number of residents want us to consider that option. I don't think that's wise. I really don't think that's wise. But a lot of the feedback you get would lead you to believe that that's the option we should go in based on what people are advocating for. So I'm just putting that out there. But once again, nothing I'm saying or have said is to slow anything down in the city. But I once said this on the Board of Adjustment, I'm not going to sit here and be a lemming. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have a conversation, and we're going to discuss things, and we're going to move as quickly as possible. And I wanted us to move more quickly on the look back thing. But I basically got advice that that wouldn't be the way to go, so I was willing to do that. So anyway, I just think it's important that, you know, the misinformation and the like, if we want to consider the exiting from the National Flood Insurance Program, maybe we need to add that to an agenda item moving forward, because there just seems to be a lot of dialogue out there that people think we should just throw caution to the wind and start rubber stamping permits, quote unquote, that I've seen. So anyway,
I don't think anybody on this board has advocated anything other than trying to move stuff forward. I agree with you, and I think it's done from a place of frustration for residents, and that's where it's coming from. They've had unclear direction. Things haven't been. Our website is not the most friendly. It's kind of layered down. It's hard. My heart goes out, and I've talked to a few other residents about once I can get my stuff together, being able to be a source to help some of the elderly folks out there. Because we have a large elderly population that doesn't have access. And everybody who's a little younger than me all think that everybody, is computer savvy and all this, and they can get on and they can, navigate the website and do all this. Heck, I can sometimes can't even navigate our own website. So, and I find some of the information very difficult to understand or follow. So I feel the frustration. I know where it's coming from. I think some of the things, there's a lot of misinformation out there on Nextdoor that's going around. This option 1, option 2. There's no option 1, option 2. Please, everybody, just read FEMA P 578 or 758. Read that. Read section 7. Read the whole thing. It doesn't say there's not going to be a substantial damage letter. It doesn't say that. And as far as what we've been doing is we have been doing as best as we can, because we did not have the staff as well to get out and immediately do assessments, and that's what option 1 had called for. So we did do what we could do in a combination of both of those, and they're not even, it's an or thing. So.
Excuse me, again, if you would like to speak, please fill out a form, come to the front. Okay, this is not a just calling back and forth scenario. So the commissioner speaking, I'm going to ask you again very kindly and politely to let her speak uninterrupted, just like we let you speak when you came forward. Thank you.
I probably have a lot of questions like everybody else does, because I did receive my letter as well, and I'm 63.9%. So I do have questions in regards to the whole process, because I've seen stuff on there just as well as everybody else has that said I had 25% plumbing damage and I had not a single issue with my plumbing. I'm raised 2 feet up, and that isn't accounted for in anything. I got no cost value from my fireplace. There's just stuff, it's just very subjective. And I just want to remind everybody, unfortunately, that this is a process. It's not an easy process, it's a hard process, and I think what you should demand from your city is a clear, concise info on how to navigate the process. And I think that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to clarify some of that. Some of that is anybody who's 30, deemed 30 and below, those should fly through without a review, basically. Okay, but everybody has to do from the damage, well, I have a question on that when we get to that, but you have to do an SISD packet to move forward, to document that stuff. So that's not going to go away. But I share what you're saying, and I feel the same way about my home, and I'm only hoping we can continue to do better, and I'm sure we will.
Thank you. Any others? Mm-hmm.
Julie Fisher.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Hi there, Julie Fisher, 471 85th Avenue, St. Pete Beach. I'm also a small business owner. We moved down here at the end of May to live our beach dream. We bought a little guitar shop over here, right around the corner. Bought our little beach house, got our little golf cart, and then we got damaged 4 months later. So while I currently reside on 85th Avenue, I really live in a very small camper in my driveway for the past 90 days. I'm not here to complain. I want to thank you all. I see you, I hear you. You guys have been working so hard on all of our behalf. I do have a couple of questions. and a thought that I would like to share with you. I just came back from Scotland. I write, and I was at a climate change summit. And the fact that I've been twice hit by a hurricane made me a rock star while I was there, which is not what I want to be famous for, by the way. But there was a lot of conversation around the future and what we're building for the future. And so a couple of questions that I had, and just a thought is, I know that we're trying to figure out how to get people in their homes because we're all in crisis mode and we're all exhausted. All of us, we're all exhausted. I don't like living in a camper. It's terrible. I thought van life was for me. Turns out it's really not for me at all. My question is as we start thinking about look back, no look back, 1 year, not 1 year, climate change is real. We are sitting on the edge of it in our current evidence of never getting hit by a hurricane to be getting hit by 2 hurricanes back to back. So when we think about whatever and this is my question, as we think about 1 year look back versus no look back in August, some of us, many of us, are not going to be done with our rebuild. We're not going to have our permits closed out. Like, that's the reality. And now we're going to be back in hurricane season. So hopefully we'll be able to close that out. But we need to think about what happens when the next hurricane comes. So whatever decisions we make right now, I just want to urge us to not just think about, and I think you made a very eloquent point of, it's not just we're operating in crisis mode right now, but it's also, are we going to have to come back and change this again in August? Or if I'm right at that 50% mark, and I got my roof, because now I have to count for my roof, because I didn't think I was going to have to count for my roof, but now I have to account for my roof. So I'm getting close. I'm getting really, really close on this. But then what happens when another storm comes in August? So then what happens if you have a 1 year look back, if you have a 2 year look back, if you have a no look back? How are we thinking long term? And that's really where my concern is because I'm passionate about this community. I'm excited to be here. I want to grow my business, which is failing, right? Because there's nobody on the beach. This is hard. This is hard on all of us. And I've also lost the vehicle. I've lost it all. Like, I'm with everybody else on this beach. And as we think about hardening, as we think about building infrastructure, as we think about potential new hurricanes that are coming, what could that mean for the future?
Thank you.
Lynn Savoya.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Sorry. Lynn Savoya, 7623 Gulf Boulevard, St. Pete Beach. And I had a question on the what is it called? It was a grant that I think you're referring to. It was the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, where they're giving out grants. The state is giving out grants to elevate your house. Is that the same grant that was being referred to earlier? Oh, so there's more than one?
And I don't want to speak for the mayor, but it's not, we're not having, I'll address it after you're done, but I don't want to take your time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that was my question on that. And then DeSantis said we could also apply for tax rebates on our property tax. I don't know when we're supposed to do that. I couldn't find that information. And then my other question might have been answered. Oh, is there a timeline to complete any restoration? Or any timelines that we should know about?
So I think what would probably be more beneficial for you is if you send either your commissioner, whichever district you're in, an email with these questions, and then we can actually respond to those.
Okay.
Because some of them are not readily available resources, like a link to that. But for the tax assessor, you can look on the Pinellas County Tax Assessor's website. They posted a video and additional information on how you can file for a rebate. If you email Commissioner Resnicki, she'll be able to send you a link to that to that grant program. But really, for anything specifically like that, it's just easier if you email us, and then we can generally respond within 24 hours with what the answer is.
All right, thank you.
Sometimes it takes research too. It may not be something readily available.
Okay.
And Mayor, can I just say, because I don't want you or the public to think, this is a grant for a specific city. So I was talking about grants that were available in Miami Beach. Okay. So it's not, the state is going to, it hasn't been official yet. There's not an application process for the states, and I forgot what it's called right now. Maybe, Francis, I don't know if you know what it is. Elevate, they just posted this last week, but there's no application for it yet. So RISE, Florida, I forgot the name of it. It's not available yet. FEMA has a 30,000, up to a 30,000 grant. Again, I think some of those have closed. because they do have to request for more funding from Congress, but that's not one that we manage here in the city. Okay, but I can talk to you later.
Thank you.
John Kurzman.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
John Kurzman, and my formal address is in Beyond the Way South. So, we were concerned about our insurance rating, or that was a concern that Commissioner Mulholland was raising. And nobody's saying, I think, to throw out insurance. But I did study the rating system coordinator's manual and the recent addendum, 2021. And when you get into this whole thing about the substantial damage letters, really, as I mentioned in an earlier meeting, it really comes down to, I believe, the state was supposed to come out and reach out to the various communities previously and have the communities put together a team that identified the businesses and residents, the structures, that were high risk of floods, and already know ahead of time be ready to actually send out and say, hey, because of the flood, we believe you're this much, you have these kind of expenses. And, the steps are in the addendum. It only came out in 2021, this addendum. Also, you heard someone mention about option 1 and option 2. So this is in the desk reference, the P758. So option 1 was that these letters could be proactively inspect the building soon after the event, and this is what Tidal Basin is running around doing. But as I understand it, they do it a lot from outside. So I don't understand how they could be using the official, SDE tool, the desktop, the software that would really go into a detailed analysis that would use, for instance, an ICC, which is where you then get your special money. And then the second choice is you can notify owners of the requirements to get permits and then wait for the property owners who actually apply for permits and then make determinations following the normal permit review, which I guess is more what Treasure Island has opted to do. And so this is the SDE software where, I think people have seen those quotes where you get your quote from the flood NFIP, when you get your flood estimate. So I'm still not totally following why someone wouldn't use, cut and paste from that and try to then figure out what they need, because how is Tidal Basin ever going to give you the level of detail you need? What I'm afraid of is we're going to get beat up for, and this is something the state also still hasn't fixed. The state still has the wrong maps for a lot of our city and has in their official map some of our homes sitting out in the middle of the water. So these are the things that FEMA looks at. And so the state needs to really fix the flood maps on the state website, and it's having a lot of our structures, misplaced. And that's the kind of stuff that the state needs to fix. And then also, here's the categories and the ratings of the cities. And, we're in there's only 5 cities that have higher ratings than us. So we have room, to slide, I think, without saying we want to get rid of, insurance altogether. And we want to keep the communities together and keep people, living in our town.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
So we have a quick update, just general update, including permits.
Good evening, Denise Anderson, Community Development Director. So I wanted to run through a number of updates, and I hope some of the questions are answered in some of this update. And I'm happy to talk with you after this meeting as well. So we're going to touch on substantial damage determinations, talk about some permitting policy information as it relates to single-family and duplex properties, multi-story structures, and multi-tenant commercial structures. Talk about numerous changes and updates to the website, a permit status update, a new mission request we have for additional temporary staffing, and then a brief debris update. So substantial damage determinations, to date, we've issued 1,389 determinations. This is up substantially from even last week's December 10th update. We're getting a lot of data rapidly from Tidal Basin, some challenges with the data that's being transferred over, a lot of duplicates, things like that. So though we're getting a lot of transmissions, it's causing a lot of work. So, but the 1389 represents the number of posted letters that we have sent out as of today, but we have received additional information. So as you can see, for those that are determined to be substantially damaged and non-substantially damaged, it's broken out there by commercial and residential structure. Let me back up, if I will, if I may. We'll talk a little bit here about substantial damage determination. So a lot of questions have come in about substantial damage determinations, how they're assessed, how the numbers are configured. It's been discussed here briefly tonight as well. Please, please, please look at the website. You'll get a decent understanding now, and we'll talk through that in the website updates. But as it relates to letters of non-substantial damage, this has also been a question that's been asked. In some cases, we are seeing non-substantial damage calculations when homeowners are telling us that zero damage has occurred, and how do we address that going forward? So I just wanted to share with you a statement, if I could, from our FEMA representative about recommendations for moving forward. So according to FEMA, the city must validate that no damage was received during the events and that no work was completed before altering the substantial damage determination, or non-substantial in that case. It's best to complete this with an inspection of the interior. So as you know, substantial damage assessments largely have been conducted in the countywide effort as observations to exteriors of structure. They did gain entry at various times. We have done a few of those, though we suspended that activity. We did do some of those interior inspections. What this is really referring to is going in and assessing that zero damage occurred following a storm, and we can write that, adjust that non-substantial determination down to a zero damage. And I understand why some people are asking this. If they're planning to sell their home, they want to be able to show evidence that no damage of any kind occurred at that home. I would suggest to you that we can gear up that activity after January 1. We do have, through one of our contract providing service firms, an ability to bring in more inspectors, and we can dedicate them exclusively to that activity as part of our appeals process. So getting on to website updates, the best place to start is go to the home page. You'll see a pop-up screen that says click here, or you can scroll to the bottom and click off the tile that says hurricane rebuild and repair information. That truly is the best page to begin a navigation to gather the information that you may have questions about. On the
Ms.
left,
Anderson,
yes, sir.
I apologize, but before we go too far.
Sure.
So on the re-inspection, so we wouldn't ask Tidal Basin to do those or require them to do it, since they were the ones that were paid and maybe took, well, I don't want to say they took shortcuts, but there's a lot of, as you're well aware, as so am I, there's a lot of questions out there about how they came about their numbers. So we're going to use either staff or somebody else to do these inspections?
Right, a contracted inspection firm, Wildan, Cap Florida, one of those firms that we have under contract currently. And they will go out and do specific interior inspections to confirm no damage. What we did inquire with Tidal Basin about the ability to re-inspect entire neighborhoods, reassess entire neighborhoods as an example, or to do those types of inspections. It is not within their scope of work. So their scope of work is defined under, I believe it is in Section 7 of the desk reference. It's a rapid assessment of a large-scale disaster is really their scope of work, and it is this broad subjective assessment process that they're utilizing.
So as you're well aware, you know I'm getting a lot of these, and you're getting them as well, particularly from Vina Del Mar.
Yep.
So there's a plan to do something shortly after the beginning of the year to address these issues.
Because it requires access to the interior of the home, we don't feel like this is a good time to begin that process. And people are enjoying the holidays, perhaps not even in the area, things like that. We need to be able to gain access to the interior of the home in order to do that required inspection.
So how does that impact the 60-day clock? Or does that not really apply on an erroneous, or what might be proved as to be an erroneous assessment?
Right, so we are asking if you've received a substantial damage determination that you let us know what your plan is within a 60-day window on an appeal, request an extension or appeal that substantial damage determination. You have both those options within that 60-day window. If you choose to file an extension, we are not putting an end date on that, and that's really because we understand that potential funding sources may be many, many months down the road, and some people may choose to wait to see what kind of grant opportunities or funding opportunities may become available through Hazard Mitigation Grant Program or Swift Current, which I'll talk about in a moment. So it's really, FEMA requires an acknowledgement of substantial damage determination, and that's what that appeals process or extension of that appeals process really does.
So on the non-SD homes, can you give me an estimate of when there will be a public comment or when this will be addressed on the city website? So maybe I can point them there.
Sure. We can get that information up probably next week. We'll maybe add an additional navigation here to the left-hand sidebar, separating that from a substantial damage. Note here will say how to handle non-substantial questions about non-substantial damage and how to get adjustments, things like that. And I haven't worked through that entirely, but I'm sure we can get that up by the end of the year.
So, and will there be, so currently what we're discussing, aside from or legitimately assessed SD homes and homes assessed as non-SD but not zero.
Right.
So those are the ones that we've spent, at least in the last week, speaking a lot about. But I have also received questions on, let's say you're at 25, but you think you should be at 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm almost embarrassed to bring this up because there's so many more critical things to be dealt with. But these are questions I get asked, and that's why I get paid to do this job, to ask a question for the people in my district. Is that something that is going to get considered? And I'm not expecting that tomorrow. I'm just curious. Is that on the radar even yet? Because it's on mine.
I understand why everyone is asking those questions. I would certainly be wondering as well. I posed that question to Florida Division of Emergency Management and to FEMA Region 4 representatives, and they assured me of the following. They said to me that the content of a non-substantial damage letter in terms of the calculation of assessed damage they have no interest in that. Their interest is whether it's non-substantial or substantial, has no impact on flood insurance rate. Their flood insurance policy rating, if you will, has zero impact on that whatsoever. If a homeowner wishes to have an interior inspection through an appeals process of a non-substantial, we can work that in. Our highest priority, quite frankly, is going to be pursuing those that believe they have 0% damage, because I certainly understand how homeowners wish to be able to convey to a realtor or others, if they choose to sell, that they have 0% damage, showing no flooding occurred in the home, because they do have to disclose that through a real estate process. We would entertain any of those other requests and work those in as appropriate. We certainly wish to deliver the best that we can so that people ultimately have the best information, but staffing, resources, and timing are always going to be a challenge, as you know.
Thank you, and I apologize for cutting you off in the middle, but
Quite all right.
and I may have more questions on that after you finish, but I did want to get to that. Thank you so much.
I have that same question, whether there was a cap on that or not for the 0 to the 30, because the 30 we are not reviewing those SISD packages, we're just issuing permits, correct? That's still my understanding of that, correct? correct?
Yes, it is.
So those non-SD letters, and it'll go with SD letters as well, they stay with the property and the property card here in the city?
They do stay attached as well, it's not really a property card, but yes, they stay attached as a permit. We will close them out once we close that file. So it will not be visible on the website. That SISD permit will get closed either through the appeals process or otherwise, or once we issue a permit, we end up closing that SISD permit. At least that's the process I hope that we're following. That's our intention. So those will not be visible going forward, again, once we've issued permit on those. They remain open to notify the homeowner, and then, as I said, once we get through the permitting process, the intention is to close that. When a permit is closed, a repair permit is closed, we'll close the SISD letter.
So, and this is not true in my neighborhood, but it's just a question I have, but, so if somebody has, say, 19% damage, and it's nothing that needs to get a permit for, do they need to fill out anything? Is there anything that they need to do?
The substantial damage letters and the non-substantial damage letters, they do not require that a homeowner get a permit. And what I mean by that is if they are doing work that requires a permit, they of course must get a permit. But it does not require that they repair their home.
Okay, so there's no requirement for that? No SISD packet needs to be put in?
They can sell their homes as is.
They could do whatever they want with it, okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to be clear on that, thank you.
Then how do they close? Because you said that they will close, but what will trigger the close? Like when, say if they did have a damage like Commissioner Robinson is saying, or that they could repair, a fence or something, repair fence, not putting in a new fence. When will the city close it?
Are we talking about the SISD?
SISD, yes.
So the SISD...
Because it's technically a permit, right, that's open, because you're saying it won't be visible in the future.
Right.
So, but what will close it? Are we expiring them all at some point?
Truly haven't gotten through that thought process, but the intention, the process right now is if you go through a repair permit process and attached to your property card is the SISD permit, once you close the repair permit, we'll be closing the SISD permit as well.
That one I get, but I'm talking about if you don't have to address anything.
Right.
Honestly, I don't know.
Just put a note down.
Yeah. I'll put that one in the parking lot and we'll get back to that one. I haven't thought that through.
Okay.
So as you can see I don't know how well you can see this here with the SNP, but we have an all-new navigation on the left-hand sidebar of this hurricane rebuild and repair information. This is
back really quick. I just want to clarify for the commission because I don't want to. These are public record, no matter what, regardless of whether they're.
Yeah, someone can
I
request.
just want to make sure you didn't think.
No, that I would understand, but someone who's looking at your property is going to see if there's permits or what has the
what's outstanding,
and they'll be able to come in and ask.
But I mean, someone could say, "Hey, I want to request anything that has to do with this property." Obviously, it's a public. No, yeah, I don't mean close it as not public, but I mean not beyond as an open permit on a property.
We will work through that process.
Thank you.
So on the left-hand sidebar, this is really now your new navigation for hurricane rebuild and repair information. If you're unable to read that, it is the landing page there, hurricane rebuild and repair, followed by the 2025 SISD review package, substantial damage determination and appeals process, the permit tracking dashboard, the substantial damage visual flow chart, presentations from recent meetings. This presentation will be posted probably tomorrow or Monday. And then housing recovery support.
Where is the fourth story? As far as that, is that on here?
It's in this presentation. We haven't put it in the website just yet, but that will go in there. I'm working with Mark is the best place to put that. And we may, in fact, put that in another navigation tool on the left. So you'll see that here in table form in just a moment. So in the hurricane rebuild and repair information landing page is updates to post-storm specific FAQs. I'd like to thank Commissioner Robinson for working with us on this to help clarify the many questions we get about wet wiring and whether or not wiring needs to be replaced all the way back to the panel. It does not. As you can see, you have some choices there. You can elevate your receptacles to get above the flood line. That's one way to handle wet wiring. You can take that, replace the wiring and put a junction box in above the wet wiring and not having to take it all the way back to the panel. It's important to note that if you do have cloth wiring in your home, that is a code requirement, and all cloth wiring must be replaced throughout the entire structure. So the 2024-2025 SISD review package, this of course is formerly known as the FEMA packet. It is an all-new form with lots and lots of instructions, lots of detail in there. We put this up as an entire form, both fillable and printer versions. It is 17 pages in length, and so for this reason, we also separated all of the sections and created additional forms. So if you need to reprint something, you can just reprint a worksheet or part, you know, the section that has the fillables in there. I'm trying to make it a little bit user-friendly. Lots of Q&A kind of stuff in there that have come about over the course of the last couple of months. So I think it's a lot clearer to work with as we move forward. And the information about exclusions has been removed from this. We were aware of it just before this went to publication and posted on Monday, so we removed those exceptions that Brandon spoke about earlier. So it does reflect the newest guidance from FEMA on the interpretation. So also on this web page is additional forms, links to the building permit application, notice of commencement, and agent authorization. That's hosted on that web page. Those are the most commonly needed for permit application and related. And links to acceptable labor rates, inspection information, Florida product approval search tool. So those are the most widely used or widely requested bits of information. You can also find a link on there to take you for requested inspections or other permitting forms that you may need that aren't hosted there. Again, when it comes to substantial damage determination and appeals process, this webpage has also been updated. It includes information about how the determination was made, what that assessment process is and what it is not. It is not a detailed estimate of repair costs. That comes from your SISD or from your application, your permit application itself. It gives you information about how to appeal and gives you an extension request forms. For letters that go out this week, we did make a change to our substantial damage letters and non-substantial damage letters. And the substantial damage letter, as an example, you've always been able to see a permit number in the upper left-hand corner. You're also going to see the access code for filing an appeal. We posted at the top of that letter, you know, in a box, you can appeal this, and this is how you do so, so that people understand. What we came to realize is that even though that information was in the letter, it was on the second page near the end, and a lot of people were in shock as they're reading the letter and perhaps not getting all the way through there. So we're putting that information near the top of the letter so that they understand there certainly is an appeal process.
Well, we also talked about this before, and before it was stated that there were going to be no extensions on it. It was 60 days and 60 days only.
60 days to file an appeal or request to extend. Yeah. We really, what Freeman really wants to see is that people are acknowledging that they've received this letter and that they're putting together a plan of action in some form, whether it's to appeal or comply, become compliant, what have you. So that's really what's most important to us, is that we have a method of communication for those that have been determined to be substantially damaged through the assessment process. As it relates, this is the other update that's been made to the housing webpage this week, and it was a question that was been brought up today. It's about grants. So the Florida Division of Emergency Management is applying for federal funds. They are opening up, and within the next week or so, I'm told, it's a rumor, haven't seen anything officially, that the applications will be opening soon. And again, this is with FDEM. If you can scan that code, certainly go to the website that you can see the flyer on there and scan the code, sign up for updates. You'll be notified when that application will open at the state, and you can begin the process of applying for grant funds to help you either repair or to elevate your home. I don't know all the details of what these grants may be, how much money. None of that information is yet available to us because the monies have not been applied for yet from the state to the feds, and therefore not allocated to the state. But get your application in, get in line so that when funds are available, you'll be first reviewed. So
Ms. Anderson,
The program is
can I
called
just say-
Elevate Florida.
That's
Yes.
what I was trying to remember. So
Yes,
for
thank
the
you.
resident who's sitting back there, that's the one that I was talking about.
Yeah. And you'll see the Elevate Florida flyer has been posted on the website this week as well. So this gets into the permitting process, how we're expediting permits, how we're approaching this. Again, our obligation is to remain compliant with FEMA guidelines, but also to try to move these permits as quickly as we can with the information that we need to be able to substantiate our decision-making process. So firstly, we'll talk about single-family and duplex properties. Wish to point out the footnote there. There is a special exception for historic designated properties. But if you are we've reviewed this recently, but for the benefit of some that are inquiring today, if you've received your letter and the calculated damage is less than 30%, if you've submitted a SISD packet already, great, but we no longer need to look at those. So great that we have it, but we won't be spending our time looking at those. We'll just simply review the permit and approve that as quickly as we can. If it's over 30.1 to 49.9, we are still requiring the SISD packet.
Excuse me, can you go back a minute to the first one, because I'm not sure I understand the asterisk portion of that and the not required.
So the SISD review,
Package.
is not required if it's under 30% calculated damage.
Okay, but then it says special exemption.
Special-
Requires no. So neither one of those
I'm
require?
so sorry. I'm just adding historic designation to that. I'll clean that up before we post it, but that.
Okay, so both? Or
Yes, both apply.
Both apply, do not require the packet?
That is correct. Thank you. So I will add that, I'll amend that footnote to clear that up.
So just to clarify, if you had a foot of water and the only thing you're doing is flooring and drywall, and that's less than 30%, and you have a non-substantial damage letter, all you need to do is just apply for the drywall permit, for example, not the full SISD package.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's just a regular building permit application.
Okay. I know we had this conversation at the last commission meeting. What if you received a substantial damage letter, yet your contractor and your FEMA letter from the county state that you actually are under 30%? What do we do in those situations?
So we addressed that, I think, down below. So if you have not received your substantial damage letter, and it's down here in the fourth line, if you will, so therefore we don't have a calculated percentage from that letter, we will look at the SISD, and if it's under 30%, we'll issue before that letter is received, because we are presuming that you'll be successful on appeal.
Okay.
So if you get a substantial damage assessment, which we know can occur, somebody got a 50-point something, they've mentioned, it's quite likely the reality is somewhere under 30%, or it could be likely, especially if an actual cash value appraisal accompanies any of this. So we are presuming that you're going to be successful on appeal, and we're taking those forward as a permitted item.
Okay, so I'm just restating that because I think it's really important. A lot of what we read online, Nextdoor, Facebook, and so on, people are saying, I can't do anything until I get this letter.
That is not
That's
correct.
not the case, right?
In some cases it is, but not in all cases.
Yeah. But at the very least, you can submit your SISD package, if nothing else, and if you're under 30%, then you're going to be able to move forward anyway.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's-
So
yes,
if you
exactly.
have not received your letter, please put in your permits. Complete the package, submit that, get that in as quickly as possible so we can start processing these. You do not have to wait for the letter to start the process.
That's correct. So just jumping up one line there, again, if you're over 50% on your calculated damage, then we are requiring that SISD, and there is that appeals process. We'll look at those simultaneously and issue permit. And that review of appeal typically does not take very long. What we typically need is either the actual cash value appraisal to bring that number down, that percentage down, or photos. Photos are extraordinarily helpful for us, and hopefully everybody was able to take photos immediately following the storm to document flood damage or flood levels. And then finally, that last line there is if you have not received the letter, the calculated damage, again, is unknown. We review the SISD package, but it yields damage over 30%, but less than 50, what have you, then we do need to wait for that substantial damage calculation to come through, just to tick and tie all those things together.
Now, on the substantial damage calculation, because I did receive backup on mine, I requested that. Can you explain to me why it has in there, actually has my computed actual cash value in it?
In the substantial damage letter?
No, in the calculation that they used, it has my computed actual cash value, which is at $305,000. But then it lists my appraisal value from the, which to me is indicated wrong on here to begin with, because it says it's a market appraisal instead of the tax assessed value of 162, which is my FEMA valuation. But the actual data document has on it a computed actual cash value. So I spent $500 to get that elsewhere, and it's within thousands of dollars of what my independent appraiser came up with. But this was done and is for free, and the city has it.
So I cannot truly tell you where Tidal Basin is getting the actual cash value. It's certainly not anything we're providing. We're not transmitting that information. So if they're pulling that down from some other source of data, they have not disclosed that to us. So I would presume that they might find it on the property appraiser's website, but this is the first that somebody's brought that specifically to me.
It has replacement. It looks like it's Craftsman book value on here. It's got my actual. It does have my square footage on here. I did that. It has the depreciation at 24.2%. All the calculations work out, and the computed assessed value is 305. So with that said, you know, I would be half of that, not half of 162. So I would be nowhere near 63.9%, which I am going to appeal. But like I said, you know, and it goes with everybody else in this community. If Tidal Basin has this info, why are we doing this? Why can't we just look at it and pass that through? And residents get in their homes quicker. They don't pay $500 or $650 or whatever it is to get one. It's a question that needs to be asked to Tidal Basin or whoever's doing this inputting.
So I will certainly ask that question. This is the first that it's been brought to my attention. There are 142 columns to look at, as I'm sure you've seen if you've requested.
There's a lot of them that don't have info in them. And a lot of them, and even with that being said on all this, half of it's wrong. But nevertheless, it still has my computed actual cash value on it, which is substantially higher, almost double than what the FEMA value is on there.
And yet Tidal Basin, as you know, is using the structure value posted in the property appraiser's website. So what the desk reference does reference is private market appraisal as an alternative means to establish structure value.
Which is based on actual cash value, that's what this.
Right. The question then of Tidal Basin is what private market appraisal did you utilize to determine that actual cash value? I will certainly inquire to try to get that answer. It's first, that question's been brought to me because they are certainly not conducting private market appraisals, as you know. So they must be getting it from some source. I don't know what that might be.
Well, like I said, ironically, it's within a few $1,000s of what mine came back with. And I've looked at other people's as well, and it's the same thing there.
That's phenomenal.
And the strange thing is their columns and their column numbers are not matching the same on everybody's, which is strange.
Yes, we know. Almost every transmission we get has different column data setup, which is something that perplexes all of us, which is why there's a significant staffing effort to review data when it's received. No rhyme or reason at times, I agree.
If you could find out the answer to that, I'd be appreciative of that.
I certainly will attempt to do so. Multi-story structures. So this is an important message particularly for condominium associations. So how we're approaching this is if you're 4 stories above, we talked briefly about this last week as well, but if you're 4 stories and above, where there's a presumption of non-substantial damage and less than 30% damage, just simply doing the math, and this was primarily a flooding event. We know that ground floor, lowest living level, if it's on the first floor, that was the level that was flooded. It's still the way that FEMA conducts the assessments, it's on structures, not on a per unit. So we've had this question quite often from condo owners. it's not on a per-unit basis that the assessment is conducted, it's on the entire structure. So we're looking at it from a structure perspective and how we determine whether or not an SISD package is going to be required. So 4 stories and above, it's a presumption of non-substantial damage and a presumption that it's less than 30% damage level, goes straight to permit. No SISD package is required for any of those condominium owners. If it's 3 stories and above, again, it's a presumption of non-substantial damage. What we are asking for is that we get photos of the roof or evidence that there was no water incursion on the upper level floor, because that will substantiate that for certain that it is non-substantially damaged. And if there is roof leak, then we may need to require some SISD packages, but those, I think, will be rare exceptions. And for the most part, it's going to be going straight to permit for all units within a 3-story structure. For 2 stories, it gets a little more challenging. So again, we're going to request photos of roof and exterior sides, so that we can see that there's no structural damage, no roof incursion of water. We quite likely are going to require the SISD package for all roofs. The recommendation for condominium associations for 1, 2, and 3-story structures is please, on behalf of your owners, get an actual cash value appraisal of the entire structure so that you can maximize the allowable damage repair costs for your unit owners. For those 1-story structures, it could be potentially up to 100% damage, as we know. It's, we're following, therefore, the same process as for single-family structures. An SISD package is going to be required for single unit or single-story condominium buildings. Again, this is on a structure-by-structure basis. This also is the same for how we're addressing mixed-use, hotels, et cetera. So it's the same process. Right now, what we are going through is pulling data. We have data from the property appraiser's website. We've identified 92 condominium associations. We're going through and identifying the lowest living level. If it's a lowest living level of level 2, then we know that's a conforming structure, and no damage assessment process is a part of our discussion. If it is lowest living level of 1, then we're identifying the structure, the total number of units within those structures, and we're going to be communicating with those condominium associations about our recommendations as to how to move forward and to work with their property owners. So we're doing that right now, and we should have that data completed by Monday, and we'll begin to communicate with those association owners about best way to move forward for their, on behalf of their owners.
What about their common areas?
The way that the structure value is going to be looking at the entirety of the building, and we're just, because we're in large part not looking at it on a condo unit by condo unit basis, then the common areas as well, non-substantially damaged, they can move to permit subject to all of these same requirements. For multi-tenant commercial buildings, this is proven to be a little bit challenging and complex. I think for certainly for owners or property managers of commercial structures, as well as for the leasehold tenants. So you likely know that for commercial structures, the what is typical is they lease a white box space and tenant improvement. They may give tenant improvement allowance, but very typically that leasehold tenant is responsible for all improvements to the interior. So that makes it a little bit challenging when we're talking about repair costs and repair estimates. So we've come up with this policy to try to assist, and I've been talking to a couple of commercial property owners about how we're moving forward with this. So commercial property owners, again, similar in some ways to the previous slide, if we've got a letter of calculated damage, then we follow the same practice as single-family and duplex properties. You know, we run off the calculated damage and go forth. But for the most part, Tidal Basin did not conduct any assessments of those kinds of structures. So because it's largely an unknown calculation, we are going to require an SISD package, however, not for every unit. What we're asking our commercial property owners to do is to work with their tenants and get at least a couple of units to do estimates and then we'll run the calculation on a per square foot basis and document our reasoning for making that determination. So FEMA's guidance to us is whatever your policy is, implement it, document it, substantiate your process and be consistent with how you apply it across the marketplace. So this is how we're going to apply it for those commercial structures, so think strip plazas and the like. One of the commercial property owners that I met with yesterday, he's got several tenants that he knows are not going to return. He's returning those to white box condition with the operating bathroom. He's got other tenants who do plan to reopen. So he's going to get a mix of estimates on repair costs, and we're going to run those calculations. In communication with the building official, we're really comfortable with white box condition repairs as part of that estimate. So some questions have been raised about how restaurants are viewed, because there's typically a lot of equipment. The caveat with restaurants is, by and large, virtually all of their equipment is plug-in, not built-in, and therefore it is not subject to the calculation anyway, much like your home. So permit status. So these are the latest numbers as about 12 o'clock today. You'll see some significant shifts here in the pie chart. So to date, we have received, not yet in review, this is 10/1 to current. So where we are as of today is we have 71 that have been received but haven't entered the review process. And what that means is our permit technicians need to validate that the permit is complete, notarized, and signed, and that the required documentation has been submitted with that permit application. They check contractor licenses and registrations, et cetera, and then release them into the review process. As of today, we have 521 in active review status. 342 have been denied or reviewed with corrections needed and communicated to the property owner and/or contractor. 330 of those are approved conditionally. Some interesting bits about this one that I'll share in just a moment. And we have issued a total of 432. We are averaging this week 37 permits per day. We had a high count on, what is today, Friday? On Thursday, I think, of 72 permits, or maybe that was Wednesday. It's all kind of running together. So we were able to issue 72 permits in one day. But the getting back to this 330 conditionally approved, shockingly, what we're seeing is we've got either a lot of permit applications in that have exceeded the 30% threshold and we're waiting on the SD determinations, or more commonly, shockingly, is we've got a lot of SD determinations and no active permits. Yes, so we've got FEMA packets in, the FEMA packet's been in review, the SD determination is in. It's a mismatch, oddly, of people submitting permits and people getting SD determinations. It's this weird mismatch that has been a surprise to us. We are certainly working through these quite diligently, and with the plans examiners, getting those approved rather quickly. So a lot of movement here. I'm happy to say that 1,691 permit applications have been received to date, but again, all of them are in some part of the process or have been issued.
Of the 521 that are in review?
Yes.
How many people work in the review process?
I'd have to pull that up, but I think there's a, I don't want to spitball that out of the top of my head, but in plans examiners, we've got something like 11 of them and doing the review and plans examination.
Are they amenable to overtime?
So we've made that inquiry of our contracted personnel. I know Tidal Basin allows for overtime, and Joe Payne Inc. does as well. And we've made that inquiry of Wildan and Cap Florida to find out if they're amenable as well.
And when will we know that?
I don't know. Adam Poyer is working that side of it for us. He's taking lead on project management with those project managers to monitor quantity of delivery and so on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I do have another emergency operations mission request in for additional temporary staffing. Because Tidal Basin is not doing a lot of those commercial structures, as I mentioned, those strip plazas and the like, we have requested 20 damage assessment personnel to focus exclusively on commercial structures. They should be able to do those rather quickly, In addition, 30 data entry personnel. It's clear that we're not going to be able to host them here on site, so we'll have to find an alternative site from which they can operate. But that request has been elevated to the state, and the RFQ has gone out. So we should be able to see deployment shortly after the beginning of the year. The owner-builder technical support, this has been discussed, as you know, on numerous occasions. Difficulty in filling out the SISD packet or the permit applications. We've requested 10 additional support personnel. City manager and I have also been talking about doing a call for volunteers to work with them so that we can get those applications put in. A lot of the denials and corrections needed are related to that, either information that's not fully clear or missing documentation or information. So we want to make sure that we're providing that kind of support to those who are submitting, in particular, owner-builder permit applications.
What is the timeline on that?
Again, that's out to RFQ. We are aware that we have at least one firm that's going to be bidding on that at the state. It's been expressed to us, so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to launch that right after the first of the year. And the city manager and I will probably have that call for volunteers as well to coincide with that. And then we'll conduct the training and make sure that we can find a location that's suitable, whether that's at the community center or someplace else here in the city where personnel can meet with, or maybe meet on site with owners in some cases to assist them with the process.
Nor, how many people have we brought on in the last 60 days?
25.
Okay. So again, I just want to make sure that the public understands and gets clear understanding of what's happening because of the information that gets put out there, right? I'm not taking it personally when you say that no one's doing anything. When you post that on Nextdoor and Facebook, we understand, right? We understand because we're in the same boat. With our homes damaged, our cars gone, and without permits. We've brought on 25 people in the last 60 days for a building department that generally has 4 people working there. We're bringing on an additional 50 people, right? So we're spending every ounce of resource that we have to get people back into their homes as quickly as possible. Is it moving as quickly as we want, as you would like? I don't think so. It's not. It can't move as quickly as we all want. And, you know, but this is what we've committed to, is to do all the things that we can. And, you know, we've actually received quite a few emails from different HOA presidents, associations, with some excellent suggestions. And we're implementing those. Now, we're not posting about it on a daily basis. We've implemented this and this. Well, maybe we should, right? But if you see something that where you see that there's a, you know, break in the process or something is not working as well as you think, and you have ideas on how we can improve it, right? We're not throwing those emails away and those phone calls away. We actually forward every single, and city manager, she's nodding her head because she gets those emails from me on a daily basis and probably from the other commissioners as well, and Denise as well, and I get emails from Denise at midnight. And, you know, we are making those, so again, if you have suggestions, we're open to them, and we want to make sure that we improve it as quickly as possible for everyone to get everyone back home as quickly as possible and safely, right? But again, so I want you to, I'm calling this out because I want you to see what we're actually doing, right? We've brought on we've 6x'd, we have 6 times as many people as we normally have in a small building department for a city our size, and we're doubling that number twice over. So we're looking to bring on an additional 50 people as soon as we can get our hands on them, right? Thank you, Denise.
You're very welcome. Additionally, we've requested some additional administrative support, really some technical writers to help us with policy documentation in the development of the substantial damage assessment plan, which is a best practice requirement, certainly going to help us in the long term. It's going to be necessary as part of what will most assuredly be an audit with FEMA, probably 2 to 3 years out, as we know. So getting everything documented into this is a template provided by FEMA. The document itself will probably end up being a couple hundred pages long upon its conclusion. So certainly, you know, we're existing staff, including the additional staff that we brought on, we're stretched pretty thin when it comes to getting all of these things in writing that need to be documented. And so additional administrative support to help us out with that. Another discussion that we had and will likely go in as a mission request is a Lean Six Sigma expert to come in and evaluate process and to really look at that as an independent observer and expert of process improvement. You know, I've used this analogy before. It's a little bit like building the race cars are already going around the track. It's never a position that you want to be in when you're building a system, but getting somebody to come in here and to really evaluate and become familiar with that process and make process improvement suggestions is definitely needed. And so that mission request is being wordsmithed right now, and we'll get that one sent up as well to get some help in here just to get that independent third party to take a look at what we're doing and make some suggestions for process improvement. And it's referred to as Lean Six Sigma generally.
Denise, one last question on that particular one on temporary staff. When you met with, I'm assuming this was talk with the FEMA state, and I spoke with the representative, I think it was last week, and we were talking about this and knowing that it was a possibility for the city to request for more temporary staff. But in the conversation, we also talked about whether the city could have more than one building official. And when I spoke with her, she did say that many other cities do have more than one. Was that a discussion that was also had? And again, this is just to help, you know, spread the amount of work that we have, right? I know in talking with our building official, it's not what our current building official would want, but again, to help with the amount of permits, whether it's, you know, splitting commercial from residential, is that something that was also discussed or thrown around for a while, maybe if we were planning on adding another building official?
So this is part of an agenda item. I think that the city manager
I know it's salary, but I just wanted to know about this, unless you're going to bring it up later. Okay.
Well, I think I don't know if it's being addressed specifically. Would you like me to handle this question? Okay. So we have posed the question, we've asked the question, I believe, of the law firm as well, just to confirm. And yes, we can have more than one licensed building official. It's important to note that we do have I think there are 3 in our roster that are currently working as plans examiners that also carry building official license. We have many in the additional staffing that we brought on that have plans examination, inspector licenses, and building official licenses. So we can use those in multiple capacities. And in fact, we have a second building official coming in next week. The city's official building official, Luke, is taking a planned vacation next week. A building official who has done a lot of work in this community as an inspector is already on site, an acting building official. We can have more than one building official. My understanding is that there is only one official building official, but others who carry that license can operate here as well and certainly issue permits and stamp permits. But the official building official, FEMA's going to be looking for Luke's signature on all those SD letters. He has to make those determinations, if you will. That comes from our designated building official, which, as you know, is Luke Curtis at this time.
Mm-hmm. So then in the other reviews, someone else can sign off on a permit. It doesn't have to be Luke. So we're currently doing that. Okay.
Yes, we are.
It's not just one person because again, people say, we got to wait for one person to approve all these.
That's not true.
Okay.
Yeah. It was true. It's not any longer. Correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Becky, did I miss anything in that? Or
no, you were right.
Okay, thank you. Anything else about this one?
I don't know if Commissioner, I know I jumped, but I don't know if that's...
No, it was kind of the same. I just wanted to make sure when Luke goes on vacation, somebody fills in with them, they can sign off as well.
Yeah, we have 2 building officials here next week that are licensed. One is the designated city building official for the week. So just briefly, as we've been talking about this before, we've got this deadline of December 23rd, so we're in great shape. I believe we finished all of the residential debris pickup, and I was not able to talk with our code enforcement manager today, but in a conversation I had yesterday, we were down to 6 commercial properties that have not yet complied, but that we're working toward compliance to get their debris picked up by the deadline. So maybe 23rd, maybe just after the 23rd, but I know that they're working toward getting that commercial debris picked up, and we're in pretty good shape.
Denise, one more thing on that commercial. I'm sorry, I know we're both probably going to my next the same. If it's in the right-of-way, and I can't remember the street, and maybe it's been picked up, because I haven't been by the school in a little while. If if there's debris that's in the right-of-way, but it's in front of a commercial property, and I know you've got the commercial property saying, because they've told me, that's not ours, we didn't put that, other people are dumping there. Are we going ahead and picking that up anyways, or are we letting code enforcement process kind of determine?
I'm going to defer to the city manager because I've been buried in permitting instead of code enforcement, so I'm going to defer on that one.
I actually don't know. I would want to know the property specific because we have had a couple unique situations.
It's on the street just north of Gulf Beaches Elementary School, and so I forgot the number. I mean,
So if we can send the city manager an email with a specific address, then we can answer on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's just that one, But, I mean, again, it's just for the process, whether we're saying after the 23rd, that's it, everybody else just has to go through the process, code enforcement.
We've already started code enforcement. That's why we're as far as we have. And if there's debris in front of a business, I'm pretty confident they are in the code enforcement process.
So
Yes, sir.
there's a property on Paso Grill Way that is in the system. I've had that confirmed. So how's that going to be handled moving forward? They received I know there was some discussion about it, either the last meeting or the meeting before. So they've been noticed. What's next? Is the city going to actually, because I know there was some discussion about the city paying to have it picked up and then they would be charged back, but then I got the sense that there wasn't a real appetite for that. So the address I'm talking about, I believe, is 1706 Paso Grill Way. And it's an apartment building that has basically filled the sidewalk, is now moving towards the condos to the south and has wrapped around on 18th Avenue. And I've personally told the workers that to let the resident or the owner know that they need to have that removed, and they have been noticed. So how's that particular property going to get handled?
You want me to
I can
take that? Okay.
now. So the process is that once they receive the official notice, which I would want to confirm whether they've received an official notice from the city, there's a time frame that they have to remedy it. If they do not remedy it, this is part of our normal process. We pick it up.
Okay.
Fines begin at $250 per day. They will be noticed of the bill plus the fines, and it'll go to special magistrate. So we are tracking all outstanding code enforcement issues to the special magistrate in February because we wanted to give a little extra time for people to comply. But if they don't comply, we will be taking them through the special magistrate process.
Yeah, and I think this property is owned by an investor or an investment group or whatever, but, so how long is that going to be laying in the street? Once again, you haven't confirmed it, but I have received confirmation from one of your senior lieutenants that they have been noticed. So assuming they have been noticed, what kind of timeline before the city picks it up? Because it's a mess.
I'll say it's days, not weeks.
Days, not weeks?
Days, not weeks after the 23rd. I have seen it as well, and it is.
Okay, so you know the one I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
We talked about this, though, previously. The objective really is compliance. So even though there might be fines accruing going up to that special magistrate process, if they have paid for the invoiced amount, the cost of us picking that up, or if they agree to do so, my understanding from policy discussions that we've talked about is that we would recommend to the special magistrate that no fines be accrued.
And I'm good. We can move on. I appreciate it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Well, I apologize. I'm good on debris, but I want to circle back to you just on the SD, the Vina Del Mar.
Sure.
Just a couple quick things. So there's one home, you've dealt with it. I don't need to use names or addresses, but it's one of the homes that you've heard about. And I don't know for a fact, but it is highly likely this home did receive no damage. Mm-hmm. And it received an SD letter for like 65%. I mean, these folks have like the highest seawall down there. They have hurricane shutters. They keep the place up and all that. They've pretty much done everything you could possibly do on a single-level home, and they're already on an elevated lot. So I know they have to go through the process. They know it. I don't think they're happy about that, but they have to go through the process. Is it a possibility that they will be able to go all the way from 65 to 0? Or?
Sure.
Okay, so that's good. That's good to know. And I guess the last thing on SD appeals, let's say this home or any home, I've seen some of the communications from you and others. You can hire somebody to come in, but if somebody's willing to do the paperwork themselves and ask the city to come do the inspection, can they, for the most part, avoid expense? I know.
Oh, yeah.
I have told people it's a pain, and it's part of being in the flood insurance program for the betterment of the city. That's kind of my explanation on it. But, you know, people, they say, well, I got to spend a lot of time, I got to spend a lot of money. I get the time side of it, and people are going to have to put time into it to do the appeal. But if somebody truly had an SD letter, but they truly had no damage, then they should be able to do that appeal at no out-of-pocket cost to them, other than the time that it will take to request the appeal and be there for the city's, either the city staff or the third party to inspect. Is that correct?
That's correct, and there's no cost to that. So at least currently, right, through January 14th.
So they don't have to hire anybody to prove that they're right.
Correct. So what we've asked for, and you've seen my communications, is send us photos of the water line and the driveway, debris line, what have you. Those are really good photos for us to see if we can clearly tell that there was no water incursion in the line. Show us, one of the questions I had was, I'm on a crawl space. It shows the water line of the crawl space. Show us any evidence that you have. That's good enough for us. We'll probably ask for a roof picture as well, just to make sure that Milton didn't get you with the wind. And we're good to go. We can document the file and reverse the determination.
But if they don't have any photo of water lines, because the particular family that I'm talking about, but it's not just an isolated incident, they're often in Georgia this time of year, so they came down after the storms, and they didn't have any damage, but they may or may not have taken photos. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just asking the question that if they don't have photos, they can still get the inspection.
Correct.
And if it's clear and obvious that the home wasn't damaged, they can get rid of the SD letter.
That's correct. So an on-site inspection will suffice.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I do have one comment card if you want to take comments.
Certainly.
John Kurzman. Okay, never mind.
Thank you. All right, next we have action items. 3A, authorize the city manager to adjust the building official salary range.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. If I could have my one slide, please. Tonight, I'm bringing to you for consideration, as you recall, the city went through a comprehensive pay plan several months back, and the commission directed the city manager to implement that pay plan, and I have been doing that in accordance with what was presented to you, and continue to do so, so that we have a structured compensation plan for the city. Since then, we have made multiple, so when I arrived at the city, we had a contract billing official. We still have a contract building official. And the actual cost for the contract far exceeds the amount I'm requesting this evening because of the base amount plus whatever the contracting agency adds on as their administrative fees. We've made multiple attempts to do a recruitment for this position. This is one of the tightest labor markets for the talent and certification we need under the Florida Building Code. I reserve requesting these types of compensation requests above general market position that the commission recommends for very rare circumstances, and this one is rising to that level. And so because we have made multiple attempts to recruit for this position, I am requesting that the council consider authorizing me to move the salary range 7.5% above the set standard for the city. Also to move the position to an at-will under Section 102 of the personnel regulations. And what that does is it puts this position at a level of essentially my executive leadership, so department heads. And I would like to generally include that position on my leadership team, given the strategic work that we're going to be doing, not only for the next 2 years, but even when I inherited was a department that was sorely understaffed and I think strategically led. And so to have someone in that position and part of my team, I think is not a bad idea. And this would change their retirement contribution by moving in that personnel rules and regulations section from a 10% city contribution to a 12% city contribution. You do have a resolution in front of you this evening. I'm asking that you move approval of the resolution, which modifies the personnel regulations and authorize me to set the new salary range as proposed on the slide from 99,241 to 158,784. It's the end of my report.
Thank you, City Manager. Questions, comments?
Mayor, may I read the title into the record?
Please.
Resolution 2024-31, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, amending the personnel rules and regulations for Section 1.02, Parent B, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. I'll add one comment, again, just for for the public to get a better understanding of exactly why we even have this resolution before us. We've been without a building official years. Yeah. So this is the person in charge of this department, right? When the last gentleman left, he was here for a very long time. Then we got hit with COVID and all the employment challenges that have come and resulted from that. Now we clearly need to have somebody in the building department. We have to have a building official so that somebody can sign off on all the permits, right? This position we've been subcontracting it out for a very long time, while we're also trying to hire somebody at the same time. And we've been unable to hire anyone. I mean, it's not just us, but every city in the state of Florida is dealing with this. These people are in extremely high demand. We had a salary study. We increased the range a couple months ago. Even with the increased range, we still are unable to find anybody. Even the person who's here on a contract basis has been offered a job full-time, and they would rather, maintain that, per diem contract job that they have. So what ends up with cities like us in our size is, as we're competing with larger cities like Clearwater, St. Pete and the county, and then we're also competing with third-party vendors who we then have to subcontract to. Except that when these building officials work for the third-party vendor, they get to work from home. They don't have to come to an office, and they certainly don't have to sit here and listen to residents who are going through the most horrible time in their lives. And so the opportunity for them is sit at home, do what they do at home, work whatever hours they want, whenever they want, right, and get paid, a very large salary with benefits, or they can come sit in the city for 40 hours a week, 9 to 5, commute to work, then go back. And so the reason that we're doing this right now is because we've heard it loud and clear from the community. Do whatever it is you can to move this building department, this permanent department forward. And so our next attempt at this is to increase the range above what even Pinellas, Clearwater, and St. Peter are paying. So hopefully, I'm not saying this, we may come back in, in 90 days and say, okay, we've got to go to 175, right? But this is the next step. The next step is to say, okay, let's raise it to the county highest level and see if we can find somebody who can be here full-time, right? And again, I want to make sure the public understands the situation that the city was facing 90 days ago before we got hit and where we are today. And this is one more effort that we're making to put this department in the best possible position. And even this may not be enough. So we may have to revisit this if we're unsuccessful in hiring somebody in the next 30 to 60 days. But this certainly puts us in a better position. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-31 to authorize the city manager to adjust the building official pay range 7.5% above the pay study, moving the position from grade 16 to grade 17, and to update the personnel rules and regulations section 1.02B to include building official as an at-will employee. Further, this includes amending the City of St. Pete Beach 401A adoption agreement to add the building official position to be grouped with the department directors, whereby the employer shall contribute on behalf of the building official who is a participant 12% of earnings for the plan year, subject to the limitations of Article 5 of the plan.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mulholland?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next we have items for discussion. Commissioner Robinson, 3B.
I'll start with freebie. I
Mayor
just.
and Commissioner, I just want to note that I made an executive decision and added it to your Monday agenda to discuss the freebie contract. So if you want to wait, it's now been noticed. If you want
Perfect.
to pull it on Monday, you can, but I just wanted to let you know that.
I'll just say I'm tired of watching them drive by my house with nobody in them. And then we can finish that discussion on
Okay,
Monday.
and I want to thank the city clerk for making that adjustment as well.
Thank you. All right, 4B, consent order.
I'm bringing this to everybody's attention based on our last meeting where we saw what dire straits our infrastructure was in, sewer system, wastewater. I have heard from quite a few residents their concerns as well for that, and asking, why we continue to even look at development as well in regards to the straits that we're in and what we're going to be looking at financially. But being somebody who's been here a long time and being well aware of the situation for the last 2 decades, I know that we were under consent order, and I have concerns that we need to get in front of that if we are not compliant with that order. That was in 2014. I put that on everybody's in front of everybody, as well as a memo noting on March 24th, 2017, some of the updates to FDEP in regards to our system and what maintenance had been done. And I am concerned whether that maintenance was done, whether we are in compliance, and very concerned that if we are not, if there's any sort of fines associated with that, and what those could be. And I just want us to get in front of that instead of be behind it and look like we're trying to sweep anything under the rug. I think we need to look at it and make an evaluation on that, and if we need to talk to DEP about it, I think it's something that would call for that, as well as whether, this is a reason too as well to support any sort of, looking at whether we should continue with development until we get this addressed. And I would ask the attorneys to take a look at that as well, because there's some big concerns on that.
Absolutely. And we can bring back a response with regard to this, not Monday. But
Oh, it's probably going to take a while, I'm figuring.
absolutely.
So this is something that I've been aware of for a long time, and something that was brought to my attention by several residents as well after the conversations that we had last Tuesday. So I do think it'd be prudent of us to take a look at the consent order. Some of the things addressed in there, for example, Pump Station 1 and the maintenance and repair of it. Other components of our sewer system that we found that were significantly deficient at the last commission meeting. There were several steps that the city was required to take as a result of this consent order. So I think it'd be important for us to understand, did we follow those steps? Looks like we, received a letter from the DEP. And if we did take care of those steps, how do we end up in a position again where we're so potentially significantly deficient in the things that we were told we had to get under control, November 21 of 2014, so 10 years ago. And then the other part of it is, do we need to start having a conversation with the DEP and say, look, the problems that we had, the problems are back. Can we sit down? Can we have a conversation about how do we rectify these problems? We're also taking money from the state to fix some of these problems. So I think that it'd be prudent of us to have a conversation with, take a look at and see what we need to do at this point.
Absolutely. Am I correct that the consent order is something that was imposed on the city by the DEP due to spillage, right? Due to discharge?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So a consent order isn't something that the city calls the DEP and says, we don't think we've been maintaining our sewer system. Would you please put us under a consent order, correct?
No, this would be, we have a consent order. We were required to do a certain number of things.
Right.
Looks like we may be deficient of having done those things. And this is just a matter of getting in front of it rather than the DEP finding about it from somewhere else that maybe we're deficient, rather than us approaching them and say, look, we've got basically everybody here is new, including the city staff. We just found out about this a week ago, right? This is an opportunity for us to go to them and say, look, what can we do to work this out and make sure that we are compliant with the state requirements? And make sure that, we're not, and if they come back and say, look, everything's great, then everything's great. But the last thing I would like to see is, somebody sends that video from last commission meeting to the DEP, and they look and say, well, I remember St. Pete Beach. They had all of these issues here for the last 10 years, and we told them they got to get all that stuff under control. Looks like maybe it's not under control, right? And then they come in heavy-handed rather than us approaching them and say, look, how do we work this out? How do we make sure that we're in compliance? And if they say, look, everything's great, then everything's great. If they say, look, we'll work with you. Let's get these things. Thank you for coming to us. Let's get these things under control. Let's make sure make sure your sewer system gets brought up to speed, make sure that your wastewater system, make sure that your reclaimed water, make sure that your stormwater drains, everything is working as it's designed to. Right.
Yeah, I would be very interested in kind of a little bit of a comprehensive overview from perhaps the city attorneys about that original consent order, what the terms were, and if it appears we've complied. I mean, this that Commissioner Robinson provided is just a memo saying that the deadline for all these things is November of 2017. And my assumption would have been that if we hadn't complied, they would have, there would be another memo from December of 2017 saying, you didn't do it. But with the very incomplete information I have here, I would definitely be interested in a more comprehensive overview of where we stand.
Well, no, that's, I think that's what we're all
Yeah.
saying is,
Yeah.
you know, let's look and see, make sure that, you know, do we have, you know, are we exactly, because some of the things in there were ongoing reports that were required for years after. And, you know, I want to make sure that we did what we're supposed to be doing. Again, all of us just, you know, I'm pretty sure the last commission meeting was a shock to most of us, right? And so now that we know about it, you know, how do we move forward? You know, and since we have this thing already in our history, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, we're not compounding an already bad situation. Good. Do we have this something that we can have by the first commission meeting in January?
We will do our absolute best.
All right. Thank you. All right, next we have a discussion on electrical wiring.
I've brought this up a couple times, and I have concerns on it, knowing that other than your house falling down, the biggest safety issue after a flood is electrical. And I've had residents ask me why they can't, when they have cloth wire, go ahead and rewire their whole house under the minimal permit for safety reasons. And it's, instead of duplicating the effort again, when they know that they're within their percentage, that they can make it within their 50 and get this work done and still be ahead of the game. It just helps them to start moving along and getting that process done. And people are losing contractors left and right on the delays. And I just bring this to the attention to see if this is something we can add to that minimal permit so that can move along. We can, again, everybody signs the affidavit that says that they know the consequences. You got to keep your receipts. You still got to add that to your SDSI packet. All of that. It just seems that it moves things along instead of it's one step, then Mother, may I take another step backwards, do it all over again. And it's a movement forward, and it's an easy one for those that can go ahead and get that done underneath their minimum permit.
So this is going to be a building official call. We don't have the authority to necessarily direct him because of how he has to link the justification under a minimal permit interpretation by FEMA versus his application, but I'm willing to bring it forward. I think we've had discussions, but we can certainly bring it forward again, and at the very least, come back and present, if the answer is no, the why.
I did speak with Luke about it, and it appeared it's more of a wording than anything else. And if that's something that we can get the correct wording on that for that portion, whether that be in the actual temporary permit or the minimal permit, then that would be great. Or it's just everybody writing their own scope of work. Things seem to be written differently. Some get approved based on how it's written. Some don't get approved based on how it's written, and it's the same thing. So
Yeah, I can certainly commit to discuss with him and see if there's some way to work through it.
It did have a follow-up to that, and if Denise wouldn't mind, just, so I apologize for not bringing this up during your presentation, but this relates to this as well. We do have a significant number of older homes from the 40s and 50s, especially if you're close to Gulf Boulevard, homes that may have cloth wiring. And just been approached by several homeowners that have cloth wiring. They've had 2 or 3 feet of water, and they were told that they have to replace their entire electrical system. So the 2 questions I have is, one, can you just please explain to us why that is the case? And then second, is this a Florida Building Code thing? Is this a FEMA thing? Or is this a City of St. Pete Beach ordinance?
So, as you know, I'm not a plans examiner or building official. But my understanding from Luke and having this conversation is that whenever an electrical permit is, so cloth wiring can exist in a home until you pull an electrical permit. When you pull an electrical permit, all electrical wiring must come up to code. So it has really nothing to do even with flood damage or with FEMA or anything else. It is building code and NEC code, National Electric Code requirement as well.
So this is a national requirement as well as a Florida Building Code requirement?
Correct. So cloth wiring, whenever you open the electrical code, you have to come to full compliance with the electrical code, whenever you open an electrical permit, excuse me.
Okay. So our building official under no circumstance would be allowed to issue a permit for any wiring if there was cloth wire present?
That is correct.
Okay, so in every circumstance, flooding or no flooding, if you're just replacing anything and you're pulling an electrical permit and there's cloth wiring, all of it has to be replaced for that permit to be able to be issued?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That is not a fun answer. And I guess the only question I have, I mean, it's not really one for us, but the question I would have is for the homeowners in that situation. I've spoken to a few adjusters that said, look, if the damage is greater than what you think it is, or there's additional circumstances, I would certainly have that conversation with your insurance adjuster and say, look, I realize I may only have 2 feet of water and normally would only have to cut the wires a foot above. But in this case, because it's cloth wiring, and again, the adjuster should know this, right? But that's really, I can't even imagine having to do that to a house.
I have to.
Yeah.
My house is all cloth.
Yeah. No, no, because look, if you had 2 feet of water, you still got 6 more feet that you've got to replace everything up in the attic, and God help you if it's underneath your slab. And okay, I wish there was a better answer for that. Sorry. All right, is there anything else? Okay, we'll see everybody Monday at 6 p.m. Thank you. We are adjourned.